enemy. Welcome back to another episode of the Hardcore Casual with your boy Bass the Kid. As always, please like and subscribe, share with a friend, a colleague, a relative, an associate, an enemy, any and all in between. I appreciate it. Every view, every comment, all appreciated. There's no basis picks this weekend. I am not interested in most of the boxing that is taking place. I had to give picks for my predictions league, but outside of that, I'm not dedicating a video to it. I will check things out here and there, but yeah, it's not on my agenda. Real quick, went to go and see the Marvels a little earlier on today. It was a decent film, to be fair. Marvel, they might be getting themselves back on track, and if you are interested in the MCU, stick around for that mid-credit scene, because it's getting very, very interesting in that space. Also watched the end of Loki season 2 this morning as well, so yeah, a few things seem to be tying in quite nicely. But that's enough about that. A few things interesting to talk about, so without further ado, let's get into it. So earlier on this week, I think it was on Tuesday, it's either Tuesday or Wednesday, you had Jared Anderson. He's got pulled over and seems like he got detained. I'm not sure how long exactly for, but without triggering any algorithms on YouTube, he was arrested for being in possession of illegal contraband, or illegal items, how about we say that, while also being under the influence of probably drink. Well, look, when was it? It was earlier on this year, where he was crying with Roy Jones Jr. about the pressures of being in the spotlight and in not asking for this life and whatever, and Roy's like, well look, God gives his hardest battles to his toughest soldiers. Things might be getting a bit on top of Jared Anderson at the moment. I'm not going to condemn him for whatever took place. I mean, at least it was for being in possession of something as opposed to of having used something. And maybe at this point in time he's looking at it saying, I'm a public figure, I gotta be on my P's and Q's at all time. In terms of the alcohol, now that is I mean, look, to be fair, what I will say is, in America, I know for a fact that the laws around sort of, DUIs or DWIs or whatever, they seem to be a lot more stringent and strict than over here. Now, obviously, don't get me wrong, like, if you're over a certain limit, you get prosecuted, but it seems like people get pulled over a lot more in the States, and especially people of a certain denomination. Like, the chances of you getting pulled over is a lot higher. So to be even tipsy behind the wheel, even over here we have what's known as there's a legal limit, and then there's a prosecution limit. And I know this because I actually got caught with this years and years ago. So there's a limit whereby if you're over that limit, they could take you into the station, and then when you have to do a test again, if you're still over that limit but you're below a limit that they call the prosecution limit, then they'll basically let you off with a warning. It doesn't go in your record or anything. It's like, okay, well, we've detained you, but basically don't get back in your car tonight, kind of thing. I don't know if they got that over there, that there might just be one limit specifically. So yeah, that in itself is a bit of an issue. And look, I guess at this point, maybe that was the reason why Bob Arum was actually keeping him active. If you remember, after the Charles Martin fight, he had another fight, I think, what was it, 6-7 weeks later. Like, there was very little turnaround time, and that was remember, that was a 10 rounder, so it's not like, oh, he was only in there for like 2-3 rounds. He was in there for the full 10, and then within sort of 6-7 weeks he was back out again. I think maybe at this juncture, especially based on some of the stuff that he's been saying, just keeping him active and keeping him in fight dates is probably the best thing for him. It might, to me, I'm not gonna lie, it looks like a slightly less drastic version of Adrian Broner at the moment. Broner was always a person, when he was outside the camp, he was doing all kinds of madness. But whenever he's in camp, obviously that's all he's got to focus on is just the training. And I think maybe that might have to be the way they go with Jared Anderson, especially in this little period here. He said he wants to get out of the game by the age of 27. He may not have been lying, because everything that's kind of been coming out this year definitely does seem like the acts of someone that's not long for the sport. And ultimately, if he's not happy in it, then it's probably best that he does move on sooner rather than later. But that being said, look, things happen. Like, hopefully it won't result in any, you know, major issues with him. I'm talking sort of law wise as opposed to just in the ring. That's a whole separate story. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on it, and hopefully it's just a bit of a slap on the wrist and he can kind of move on from this one. So Deontay Wilder's pretty much resurfaced again, which usually means that when he starts talking to select media, you know, his friends within the division, it usually means that there's a fight imminent of some sorts. Now, in recent days, he's taken to, I think it's like 78 Sports, basically saying, you know, he feels like Anthony Joshua's afraid of him. He wants to come to the UK and maybe, you know, see him face to face. Look, I mean you no harm. I'm not like, you know, there's no reason to be scared of me. Come, let's make a fight. That's all we need to do is make this fight. And he's also come out and recently also said that Alexander Usyk has basically ducked him on 3 separate occasions that they were supposed to fight. Now, the funny thing is, I know what he is quote unquote talking about with Usyk, but he's being extremely disingenuous and he's not actually giving the full details. There was 2 times when he called out Usyk, basically. So he did call him out and said, yo, let's fight. And obviously Usyk was asked, would you fight Wilder? He said, well, yeah, I would, blah blah blah. So, you know, Wilder's like, yeah, okay, cool, let's run it, basically. But what he's not telling you is that the times when he has made these quote unquote call outs, Usyk has actually already contractually like signed to fight Anthony Joshua. The first time was after the first Joshua fight that took place at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Obviously there was a rematch clause, it was scheduled, but Wilder, I think, tried to say I think it was what day? It was like a sort of around the end of that year, like the December of that year. Okay, well, let's have a fight, basically. But there was a contractual rematch, so couldn't really have that fight then. And then there was, I think the other time was after that second fight, when it had been announced that they were supposed to be fighting Tyson Fury for Undisputed. Wilder basically said, well, yeah, let's fight again. I think that's the timeline. I could be slightly off on the dates, but I remember it. But again, it's like Deontay Wilder always seems to call someone out when they already got something else going on. Now, with the Anthony Joshua stuff, okay, so him saying, well, I should go over to the UK and see him. Why? He's in Texas. You're in Oklahoma. I mean Alabama, sorry, not Oklahoma. They must be what, 2 hours apart from each other on a plane, if that. Take a plane over to Alabama, over to Texas right now. You go see him at the gym. He's there with some ex-PBC mates of yours. Like, he's not that hard to find. So even the fact that you're saying, oh, well, I should go to the UK to go see, well, clearly that means that you're not even really keeping up with what's going on in your own division. Otherwise you would know that he's literally 2 hours away from you right now, rather than the 8 hours or the 9 hours it will take you to get on a flight to come to the UK. It's bait and blatant like clout chasing, which is, it's something that PBC fighters do very, very often. Anytime that they've got a fight coming up, you will hear them talk about every and any person who's not affiliated with PBC, and then it's always, oh, well, we couldn't get the fight on because either they didn't want it or they didn't come to the table with any decent offer, so I'm gonna fight this guy instead. And that's the mantra. That's basically what they do, especially the ones that are inactive, like people that ain't been in the ring for a year and a half. Like, they keep their name relevant by attaching it to someone else's name who they've got no interest in fighting. And this is basically what Deontay Wilder's doing now. But he's doing it at this precise moment because PBC have got 3 fight dates announced for January and February next year, 2024. One, I think, is January the 13th. I think the other one is February the 3rd and February the 24th. All 3 of which are pay-per-view dates. Shock horror, right? So I'm assuming one of those is probably going to end up on the Amazon Prime distribution deal that they're working out, or something along those nature. So the guess is that he's going to be on there. Chances are it could be the the Andy Ruiz fight that they've been talking about for the last year and a half that didn't get ordered by the WBC for purse bids. It could be someone else. Like, I mean, if it's a pay-per-view bout and he is not the headliner, they might put him in there with someone else that's lower level within either PBC stable, just to say, yo, he's back. Anthony Joshua didn't want him, so he's gonna take this quick fight and then he's gonna be back out again in like March or April to fight Joshua or something along those lines. That to me seems like what is gonna take place at this point. It could even be maybe him versus Frank Sanchez. That I wouldn't necessarily put that past him either. But yeah, ultimately it's the same situation. He's gone back into talking, and it's only because at this point in time there's a fight to be had through PBC networks. Speaking of Wilder, he's also said something along the lines of he didn't watch the Francis Ngannou fight, but after watching that fight with Fury, or after people watch it, they're messaging him basically saying, oh, this don't look right, maybe you was right with the whole tampering with the gloves and X, Y, and Z. Not to get into Glovegate, but look, the only reason why that's a problem is, number one, Tyson Fury isn't the big puncher that everyone thinks him to be. Never has been. He only looked like that against Deontay Wilder because Deontay Wilder is chinny. It's been known since about 2016 that he doesn't take the best shots, and it's only because of Deontay Wilder's lack of punch resistance as to why Tyson Fury ended up looking like this big killer. So now when you go in there against someone who's used to taking full-blooded shots from knees, elbows, shins, fists, in smaller gloves as well, that just means that ultimately those same punches weren't going to have the exact same effects that they did when he fought you. But anyone with common sense would have known just before. That's purely the only reason that he looked so devastating against against Deontay Wilder. Just Deontay Wilder's never took the greatest shots. He's never had the biggest punch resistance. You look at his frame, there's just not enough there to absorb shots by someone that weighs over 200 pounds. He's been wobbled and rocked quite badly in several fights, and anytime he gets hit, his whole construct always changes because he just doesn't have enough weight supporting the lower half of his body. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on that one. Like, and him saying, oh, the game's lacking excitement when I'm not there or whatever. Well, excitement for who? Like, who did you fight that was really exciting? You fought Fury, cool, and you fought Ortiz. Outside of that, who else did you fight where there was excitement or that you done anything significant? The Brazil fight that should have never taken place. The excitement would have been you fighting Dillian Whyte when you were supposed to, back in 2019, 2018. That's where the excitement would have come from. The excitement would have come from you fighting other top contenders in the WBC top 10 rankings, or even the Ring Magazine top 10 rankings, none of which you did. The excitement would have been you pushing harder to fight Charles Martin for that IBF Indy unification, which both you and Al Heyman didn't push for, or not putting up enough money to fight Joseph Parker in a unification. That would have brought excitement to the division. Everything else is like you're basically just there picking off scraps and then calling out the quote-unquote big dogs ultimately trying to sell you out. That's how it looked like to me. But yeah, I'm interested to see what happens next year, who he's gonna fight, if it's gonna be someone credible, if it's gonna, I don't think he's in a position now where he's gonna get the hand-picked opponents that he used to, because at the age of 38 there's not much tread left on the tires of that career. So if anything, he needs to be careful that they don't feed him to their next big prospect, or maybe like the next guy that they're looking at up and coming. But yeah, look, ultimately, to be honest, anyone inside the top 10, I think he's food for, if you want me to be real, especially the Eastern European and the, you know, the Eastern Bloc guys. But that's my opinion. I'm sure someone else has something different to say. Feel free to leave it in the comments. We can debate it. And last but not least, Anthony Joshua was on a show with the BBC with Louis Theroux. What day was that? I think it was Monday or Tuesday again. Now, it was a bit weird for me to kind of watch this, because Louis Theroux ultimately is he's a very sort of weird character, but he has, you know, he's got moments of brilliance in him basically. And I feel like there's several occasions in this whereby he put Anthony Joshua in a position where he had to answer questions or criticisms that he wasn't comfortable answering. One of the sort of the big ones was when they was talking about his outburst at the end of the Alexander Usyk rematch, where he lost the belts. So he picked up 2 of the belts and sort of threw them out the ring, and then went on the mic and everything. And you know, Louis basically said to him, and he's basically, look, I probably couldn't, I could have handled that better, or I probably wasn't the best way to go about it. And Louis was like, well, no, yeah, that wasn't really a great scene for you to do. And Joshua almost kind of snaps at him like, well, look, you asked me a question, I'm answering the question, innit? So there was several points in there where like he's talking, and I feel like Louis is interjecting to either push him on a specific point or to disrupt his flow and his thought process to see how he reacts to it. That's what I kind of took from it. Now, and there was a couple of times where it looked like AJ was annoyed at the fact that his flow had been stopped, or that he had to almost sort of readjust in that moment. But then there's other times where I think he's almost thinking to himself like, I'm not sure if what I'm saying here is really the best thing for me. And he talks about being you know, constantly scrutinized on every single word he says, to the point where he almost feels like he doesn't want to say anything, because any and everything he does say can get sort of twisted and manipulated, or someone else can put their own spin and agenda on something he says, because it's how they're thinking, and all of a sudden, because they've done that now, no, that's what AJ meant. Whereas he's like, well, no, if you want to know what I mean, come and speak to me, like ask me. And obviously this all took place around the time of the Jermaine Franklin fight back in April, so this isn't necessarily like recent events. This basically took place towards the earlier part of the year. But the one thing that I kind of look at when I see this, number one, is there's a person in there that's ultimately is not willing to commit anymore, like whether it's necessarily to commit to boxing as a whole, whether it's to commit to an agenda, whether it's to commit to a viewpoint. There's just so much in it whereby I think he doesn't know what the right path is for him and the right thing for him to do, and he's trying to figure this out now. But it's at this age, like he's 34 at the moment, you say to yourself, at this point you kind of should know what it is you either want, or how, you know, basically where things are going for you. I say that from a perspective of, look, no one, you know, everyone's life is malleable, things fluid, things are happening, but you've been in a certain position for so long, like ultimately you should know whether that position is still right for you at this point, or whether or not it's a case that, no, I need to I need to veer away, I need to find something else, or I need to find something else that kind of focuses me and channels me in the correct way. Because if the whole scrutinization is something that you're so, you know, you're so pressed about at this point, bearing in mind that you've been in this situation for the longest of times. Actually, you know what, let me scrap that, because to be fair, the scrutinization and all the scrutiny only came recently. That's more 2019, 2020 times 2021. That's where that kind of happened, so that might be fresh. Before that, there was a lot more hunky-dory type situation, so maybe that is a new part that he's still having trouble adjusting to, because he didn't expect it to be as vehement as it is. But yeah, it was good to sort of see him around his family as well, speaking to like his aunties and stuff like that, saying that look, while money isn't his overall factor, he's basically saying that he's never going to get the opportunity to make the money again, so he's got to be smart in how he moves now, because he can't be like some of the other legends who had it all and then left with nothing at the end of it. And he said there's no chance that he's going to allow this game and this sport to take his mind and his brain away from him when it doesn't love him. You know, as soon as he's gone, they'll be moving on to the next person. They won't care. He said he's not about to take brain damage for other people. So I get a lot of the stuff that he said in there. Again, there was a parts of it that was very sort of cringe, but there was levity in there. But it's almost like every time he answered a question, he almost didn't want to. It felt like, okay, I'm only answering this because I really have to, but I'm not really feeling your vibe. And there's many times where I think people forget, as much as he's the guy that can have a laugh and a joke and be cool, this is still a 6'6", 250-pound man that, you know, has had some hardship, you know, growing up. This is still a guy that fights as a professional boxer for a living. This is a guy that there is a underlying current of anger, emotions, like frustration, some rage, and, you know, everything else that goes in between. So even though he's being courteous, you can kind of see under that surface, all right, there's still a level of respect that I'm demanding from this situation, because it can get different real quick. That's kind of what I took from it. There's a lot more analysis I could kind of bring to it, but I just wanted to look at it from the surface level. To be fair, I did see Chris Andre, he put out a video about this, about a 15-minute video earlier, I think it was yesterday. To be honest, like, he broke it down a lot better than I could. So have a look. I'll leave a link to his video in the description for this for you to go and check. It was a really good analysis and his thoughts about it. But yeah, overall I thought it was interesting. I don't know how relevant it was to Anthony Joshua, and I guess for the public perception of him now. But that being said, it was BBC, you know, the one channel that every single television has in the UK, like, regardless, even whether you have or you don't have a TV license. But yeah, interesting. You guys can let me know what you kind of thought about it, and I'm gonna sort of take it from there. With that being said, I'm gonna leave this one, probably do another episode tomorrow, and then we'll wrap up the weekend on Sunday as usual. But yeah, remember, no basis picks this weekend, so don't be looking for that. But for now, thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with any and everybody. And that is Hardcore Casual out.